And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's across the glass.
Johnny, he's made it official. Mike McGuire, the prune farmer, is running for Congress in a district that he drew.
There's been some hogwash.
Now, I don't know if you've seen the district that they cooked up for him in exchange for getting Prop 50 on the ballot, but it's not like a normal-shaped district that I guess looks like an amoeba. Sometimes they look like a blob. This is two portions. One that's along the coast that's relatively phallic-shaped, and then it goes off into inland California that rests just below it. And I've got to say, the more I look at the shape of this district that Mike McGuire is running in, the more it looks like Gavin Newsom's head. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the president of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and the host of the Howard Jarvis Radio Show, which airs Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock on KABC. John Coupal, welcome.
Hi, John. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for stopping by.
You bet. Hey, that district looks a little funky, but, you know, there was a lawsuit filed yesterday by the U.S. Department of Justice, and I had thought that Prop 50 was a done deal, but it may not be. So I haven't analyzed the essence of the lawsuit, but it's based on the federal civil rights law, so it could possibly be thrown out, and that's something would be a very good thing if it actually happens.
It would be a good thing for the people of California, but not a good thing for Gavin Newsom and his presidential hopes.
Well, he doesn't. Well, let me shed a tear for that.
Now, as someone who's been in Sacramento for a while, and you have seen what business is like up there, and we know, of course, it's a difficult state to run. It's a large state. We're larger than many nations. Our GDP is larger than many nations. Under the best of circumstances, it's a tough putt to run the state properly. But if you have a state legislature, and we know that our state legislature has turned into an insane asylum, but as hard as it is to believe, it could be worse. Imagine now that we have these districts, these congressional districts that are gerrymandered so that most of these districts are relatively safe for the Democratic candidate, and there's a couple of Republican sinks in there, so those districts are safe for Republicans, and there are very few competitive districts. I assume that what's going to happen is the independent commission is not coming back for the congressional seats. And at some point, members of the state legislature are going to say, now, wait a minute. If they can draw up safe districts for themselves, why can't we draw up safe districts for ourselves, too? Why should we be left out of all of the fun? Imagine what it would be like to run the state of California, even as a Democratic governor, if you have a state legislature that is full of safe districts with no one worried about losing re-election. I mean, just imagine what life would have been like for Gray Davis if all he had to deal with was 80 Tom Haydens in the Assembly and 40 Tom Haydens in the Senate.
Yeah, it would be bad. But, you know, they have to be careful. There's one thing about gerrymandering that people need to remember, and that is, as they craft these districts to make things much better for themselves, they have to be careful not to shave them too closely, because if you have a decent Republican running in a district that may be 8+ Dem or 12+ Dem, if you've got the right candidate, you know, they can't be asleep at the switch. I look at Jeff Gonzalez down on the Mexican border, who is running in who won in I think it was like a D+20 district, and the Republican won. How did that happen? An outstanding candidate, Hispanic, veteran, business owner. So, you know, this notion that, Republicans or conservatives, and, you know, our organization is nonpartisan, But if you've got good candidates running who are pro-family, pro-taxpayer, pro-business, and who can articulate the right message of free enterprise and who can shine a spotlight on the horrible metrics of California, highest income tax, highest state sales tax. And you know who just did this recently was Elaine Stefanik in New York wrote a very good column in the Wall Street Journal about how New York is the worst state in the union. And Steve Hilton submitted a great article that was published, and he says, I really support Elaine Stefanik, but I'm going to take issue with you about who's the worst state. And he did a side-by-side comparison of the state's metric, New York, and New York is horrible. But he said, wait a minute, hold my beer. Let me show you the numbers in California. The highest poverty rate when cost of living is taken into effect, highest energy costs, highest taxes. So I kind of like this debate between the conservatives in New York and the conservatives in California saying, hey, our state is worse. That's why we need to push back as hard as we can.
The new rumor swirling around Sacramento and Washington, D.C., is that Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, who may not even be a resident, a legal resident at least, of the state of California, is now thinking about throwing his hat into the ring and running for governor. And I've got to tell you, when you look at this field and you look at the people that you assume would be front runners in the race, people who have been planning on running for governor and preparing to run for governor for years and years and years, they all seem to be taking passes where the lieutenant governor, Eleni Kounalakis, a very rich lady from a very rich family here in California, right. She was a declared candidate. It looked like she was going to wrap up all of the major endorsements, and then inexplicably she drops out of the race and decides to run for treasurer instead. We saw the president pro tem of the Senate, Tony Atkins, drop out of the race. We saw Kamala Harris opt out of jumping in the race. We now have seen Alex Padilla, the United States Senator from California, announce that he won't be running. Why do you think so many people who have a chance, who have a theoretical chance at winning this office, albeit I don't think they have any ideas, but they have a chance of winning, they're all deciding against it? What do you think is going on here?
Because I think they, in the back of their minds, they're thinking, do I really want to be the last captain on the Titanic? In other words, I think the looking forward as to where California is heading, and yes, we're the fifth largest economy, and we have all these things that should be so beneficial to the state. If you look at the financials, you look at the liability, I think people just don't want to be involved, or they're afraid of the inability to actually address these problems like crime and homelessness. If you're in a fairly conservative state or a marginal state where you can make a difference, the question is California so far gone that some of these people say, I don't want to run? I mean, I think we saw that, Josh Shapiro, the somewhat successful Democrat governor of Pennsylvania, took a pass on being Kamala Harris's running mate very wisely, because he made the calculation of, do I really want to be associated with this? And, John, I'm not sure, but kind of in the back of my mind, I think a lot of people are taking a pass on this because I'm not sure that being involved with the party in power in the state of California is a good thing, particularly when the number of people moving out of state and businesses that we're losing, not to mention the 2030 census, California is going to lose 4 representatives in Congress probably as a minimum. So it does not bode well for people who hunger for power. And I laugh when you said Eric Swalwell, because, I mean, seriously? I mean, that guy has quite the reputation. I mean, the guy had allowed a Chinese spy to secure a lot of the things that he was doing in Congress. So I don't know. He's not a serious person. Now, will a serious person run on the Democratic side? I don't know.
In the old days, the former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, a Democrat from Massachusetts, used to say, all politics is local. Don't obsess over national issues. All politics is local. And back then, I think it was. And I think it still is for people on the right side of the aisle. You talk to people on the right side of the aisle, especially here in California, they're well-versed on what's going on right now, what's wrong with the state. But I think on the opposite side, for Democrats, the opposite is now true. I think for them, all politics is national. Their number one, number two, number three issues right now is orange man bad, orange man bad, orange man bad. And when I talk to people in my own social network, Democratic voters, people who are liberals, people who vote that way, and you say, okay, I understand that your ideology is different than mine, but how about the bullet train? There is no intellectually honest argument you can make to me saying that that's a success. And the answer inevitably is not that they agree with how it's been run, not that they think that the program has been a success, not that they have strong opinions on it one way or the other. They just regard that issue as a distraction and not relevant. Hating Donald Trump is what's relevant to them, and the fact that they have to buy their shampoo through bulletproof glass is just something that's a minor inconvenience, but it's not particularly relevant. And if you're a Democratic candidate and you're running for an office, as a Democrat in California, running for a federal office seems to be the way to go to remain popular, where you go to Washington, D.C., and it's from a safe district, or if you're a United States senator from a blue state, you vote the party line. You can say whatever obnoxious things you want on social media or cable news, and you're going to be celebrated and rewarded. If you're a Democrat in a state and local office and you spend your time on the problems facing California, I don't think you're going to be rewarded even if you are successful, because they just don't care about those subjects right now.
Yeah, the Democrats in the U.S. Senate certainly didn't cover themselves with glory with this shutdown. And as much as they tried to say it was Republicans' fault, and there's going to be a slice of progressives who believe that. But I think the mainstream people, ordinary voters, fully understand that this was the Chuck Schumer shutdown. So I'm not sure going into federal office, if you're a Dem, it might change if they take power. If they take power in the midterms, then obviously they're going to have a lot more sway. But I'm not so sure they're going to be able to attain that, given the fact that, yes, it was a bad election cycle, but that was, Virginia and New Jersey, those are two blue states. And I think if, and this is a big if Donald Trump can right the ship on economic issues and bring those prices back down or slow inflation, I think that will bode very well for the Republicans going forward. And the economy does trickle down, of course, to being a local issue, because, as you said, all politics is local, and how much you pay for gas is a very local issue. How much you pay for groceries is a very local issue. So I'm not as skeptical or upset about what happened last week. I think the Democrats also, that brief moment of euphoria they had after the election was kind of washed away when they folded on the shutdown, which they really had no choice. They had to do it. But now you see so much infighting on the side of the Democrats. I don't think they're perceived as having as much power as they might have if they hadn't caved on that.
We're speaking with John Coupal, who you could follow on X at John Coupal. John, a couple of days ago, the former chief of staff for Gavin Newsom who previously worked for Jerry Brown and Great Davis and others, was arrested by the federal government and is being charged with a number of crimes related to corruption. Her name is Dana Williamson, and she has been a fixture in Sacramento politics for decades, ruling with an iron fist. What do you make of this arrest, and how much does this hurt Newsom?
I think it could hurt a lot, and not just him, but other famous Republicans who were caught up in that circle. This person was, I'll just be very blunt here, very nasty person who would call, business owners or the heads of these trade associations in the middle of the night, obviously under the influence of alcohol. I don't have personal proof of that, but that's certainly the allegation. And did I read correctly that part of the court order is that in the interim she is to enter a substance abuse program? Let's just set that aside for a moment. This is someone who was vindictive, as you can imagine, and would openly threaten business associations and other interest groups with retribution if they did not do what she wanted them to do. Very bad reputation here in Sacramento. I texted one person who is pretty well known, and I just said, "Did you see the indictments?" And this person just responded with one word: karma. And that is, I think that is a perception, not just among conservatives, but I think a lot of people on the progressive side were also targets of her well-known wrath and rage.
Yeah, it's amazing how few fans this woman has. I saw that a former Kamala Harris aide went on CNN and just spiked the football over this woman. He claimed that when he was up for a job, that she called the prospective employer and said, if you hire this person, don't expect to get anything from the governor's office. You're dead to us.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, that has happened a lot. In fact, someone who worked for me was going to get a state job, actually not a state job, but a job with another interest group. I won't mention the group. And because he had written a very innocuous op-ed in his local paper that certain people took offense to, the word was out that if this trade association hired him, they would not move their legislation. So that's, John, that is the kind of retribution, the vindictiveness that infects not only Washington, D.C., but in Sacramento as well. Somebody will, and people need to understand what a nasty environment this is. It is, people will say, will call and just openly threaten interest groups. One of the advantages, I'll be honest, of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is that we answer only to our members. If I've had one politician threaten me and say, I want to call your board of directors, and I say, go ahead, they're all in my camp, and there's nothing you can do to threaten us, because we do something very simply. We just advocate on behalf of taxpayers. We call balls and strikes. We're nonpartisan. If there's one candidate who's got a better record on tax issues, they will get our endorsement over somebody who doesn't. I mean, we're very straightforward and transparent. And if you're straightforward and transparent in Sacramento, you're the exception and not the rule.
Last question before you go. Dana claimed that when the FBI contacted her, they told her that she was not the target of the investigation, that Gavin Newsom was. What do you make of that?
First of all, I think I would take anything she says with a grain of salt. I think let's just let the legal process play out. But I do know that the people, you don't launch this kind of investigation and you don't make these kinds of indictments unless you've got the goods. So this is going to be and by the way, this is not something from Trump. Apparently this is investigation that started under the Joe Biden administration. So I think any claim of partisanship here, I'm not sure is well founded. So we'll see how it goes. But before I sign off, I do want to remind people we've got this initiative, SaveProp13.com, SaveProp13.com. Download our petition. I know Susan Shelley talks about it all the time. I'm just going to have to try to match her in terms of the number of times I mention it.
That's SaveProp13.com, and you can get more information at hjta.org and follow John on X at John Coupal. John Coupal, president of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you very much, John. Take care.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former member of the Los Angeles City Council, and once LAPD, always LAPD, of course. Councilman Dennis Zine, welcome.
Good after rainy noon to you and the wonderful KABC listeners.
Get that umbrella ready to go.
Yep, absolutely. The storm is here.
All right. So the last time we talked, we were talking about the prospects of New York City electing a socialist, a self-described socialist mayor who has believed publicly in things like defunding the police, thinks that we should abolish prisons and jails, certainly thinks that the system is what's wrong, not the criminals. We're very familiar with his worldview, and he won in a huge landslide. A lot of people were worried that the anti-Mamdani vote would be split and, as a result, allow him to waltz into the mayor's office. It looks like, looking at the numbers now, that didn't even matter. He was going to win that election regardless. In Seattle, it looks like another socialist candidate will win that city's top office, as well as the socialist candidate has declared victory over an incumbent Democratic mayor in that city. It looks like this ideology is spreading not just in Chicago, where I guess it started most recently, but New York City, Seattle, and beyond. And if you're concerned about public safety, that is something that is not good. Your thoughts?
Well, it's frightening to think that in America, this could happen. Large town, small town, big city. It's incredible. And I've been around Los Angeles my entire life. I am 78 years of age, still working with the LAPD, et cetera, involved in the community activities. I did not ever think in my lifetime this would happen in America, in any part of America, small, large, whatever, east, west. I never imagined it would deteriorate to this point where it's frightening, disarm the police. We don't need the police are the enemy, and everything's free. Free transportation, free food, free lodging. And if you own property, you can only increase rents a certain percent. But what about the bills that continue to go? What about the assessments that continue to flow? It's totally illogical. It's unreasonable, yet it's happening. It's happening here in the United States of America. When's it going to happen in Los Angeles? Well, I think we're on the verge, to be honest with you. When you look at the reflection of the LA City Council members and how many of them are leading in that direction, I think we may be the next to happen. I don't want to see it happen, but I think we're in line, because seeing the electorate and seeing who's getting elected and seeing their attitudes, it absolutely draws away from what the principles and the values of America have always been. So if you have nothing, we're going to give you everything. And we're going to take away from those that have something, because you really don't need to have this nice car, this nice home, or these nice clothes. We want to take care of those for whatever reason. We want to take care of those at your expense. And I really honestly see, if LA continues down the trend with these socialist Democrats in political office in the city of the angels, we will be the next city to fall. So does that mean you move to another country to escape, to get back to reasonableness? And my wildest nightmare, I never, ever imagined. But as we see, it is expressing itself and expanding more and more. And I would never think my 12 years in the city council would we ever degenerate to the point we are now and just getting worse. But it's happening, as you've mentioned, other parts of the United States of America. When is it our number to come up? So I feel bad for the folks that are living in those other regions of America. what's determined to happen. It's not a Democrat. It's not a Republican. This is a whole new way of lifestyle that you're being forced by government to surrender your wealth. Whatever you did to work hard to gain that wealth, to surrender that to the people that, for whatever reason, we want to give it to them. We want to make it easy for them at your expense. So Robin Hood is back. And the fact is, we're going to be suffering more and more as this trend continues.
You know, you look back into history, you look at the French Revolution, which was a violent and bloody revolution. And that was the proletariat. That was the people who said, okay, we have nothing. The rich people have everything. We're not allowed to go out and acquire the items that the rich people have. So let's go ahead and cut their heads off and take it from them. That was the basic attitude behind the French Revolution. But you look at right now at these socialist candidates, who they're popular with. They're popular with not the working class neighborhoods where you would assume that they would be popular. They voted the other way, those neighborhoods. It seems like the socialist candidates are popular with young people, young college graduates in particular, young women in particular, and it seems to me like these are populations of people, and maybe you see it differently, I don't know, where they grew up in upper middle class homes, in white collar homes, and they went to these universities and they got these useless college degrees that cost a fortune. So they graduate with a 4-year degree, maybe a graduate degree or something beyond that, and they have a ton of debt. They're drowning in debt. And they look at the lives that their parents had, where their parents owned a home and they took nice vacations and they had nice clothes and new cars, and they feel entitled to that lifestyle. But they look at their debt and they look at the inability to buy a home and they look at the prospects of them living like their parents, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And I think that there's a certain amount of anger that swirls among those populations of people where they say, okay, since I'm entitled to this and what I'm doing right now isn't working, maybe socialism is the answer, and the mayor is going to find me a really neat, affordable loft in the city that I want to live in. And maybe the mayor will take care of my health care, and the mayor will take care of all my basic needs and give me a grocery store where I can get all the stuff that my parents buy at Whole Foods, but I can buy it cheaper than that because socialism is the way to go. Do you see that as being the motivating factor for the success of these candidates?
I never really thought in that manner, but when you mention it, it seems the path that these people are following. I grew up in a household, my dad was a gardener. I think the family of four, me, my mom and dad, and my brother, I think if I'm not mistaken, he made $500 a month doing gardening. $500 a month. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of town, and we survived at $500 a month. I remember my mom going to buy day-old bread at the supermarket. I remember her clipping the coupons, going around the different stores for the food that we would eat. We never starved or anything, but $500 a month. Well, $500 a month, you'll spend that going to dinner one night now. And maybe the changing environment has created this new, I have an education, I do this, but I can't afford what I want. The house is $2 million instead of $1 million or $500,000. I mean, the cost of astronomical. The average car now costs $50,000 for the average car. $50,000. So maybe you're right. Maybe that has created the dilemma that we face. But I look at it as a deterioration of our lifestyle, our communities, our safety. And then we want to blame the system. It's not the system that's to blame. Society is changing, and society is changing. And if you can't take advantage and you can't prosper, let's come up with something new. Let's get some whack job into political office to give everything away at the taxpayer's expense. Those that remain. But if you look at, for example, Los Angeles, people who retire from Los Angeles, many of them leave California. They're either going to Nevada, they're going to Idaho, they're going to other states. They're getting rid of the environment that we see that you're saying, and I believe what you're saying is true. I think that's the attitude. School was easy, war was over, and you know what? Why can't we have this and why can't we have that? We want to have everything, and we can't afford it. So let's get someone in political office that's going to give everything to us. And we have an immigration problem where people want to work, they can't get a job, so we just jump more on the bandwagon. And what we find is a deterioration. I don't know how LA is going to handle the Olympics with the personnel that they have unless they go for a major mobilization with public safety. We don't have the people right now to handle radio calls for service when it comes to public safety. What about our fire department? I've heard they want to build 50 fire stations. Can you imagine how much that's going to cost? That's just going to provide basic safety for paramedic and fire service. If we had to do 50 more stations and equip them with the personnel, what are our taxes going to go up to? What you're saying, I think that attitude is now the common attitude that people have. Now, I'm a senior citizen. I advocate for senior citizens. I'm fortunate in my lifestyle. I can live within my means, but there's many people that have not the ability, and there's those that say, well, you know what? Where is that golden parachute that I want? I didn't get. And remember, when government had a lot of people in civil service and pensions, you don't find pensions much anymore. You got a 401k and the market goes up and down. So I think what you're saying is actually the cause of what we're facing. And we find more people joining that cause, and we find more people getting elected into political office. And all of a sudden, the other people are going to escape. They'll go to I know people who have left America, actually. They've moved to other countries just because of what we see, the transformation. And it's a very slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a very slow process, just like we saw happen in New York. I would never believe this would take place in the city of New York, and it's happening in New York right now.
Well, what's wild to me is before New York, Chicago did this. They elected a socialist candidate to be mayor, and now he's sitting on what, an 8% approval rating? Why do all of these other cities need to push the car off the cliff to see what'll happen when you got a great big example right there in the middle of the country?
Well, when you look at New York, we didn't really hear a lot about it until that happened. Oh, my God, New York, what happened? New York has fallen. But when you think, I'm going to give you free food, free transportation, free this, free that, free lodging, we now have a 4% cap on rent increase in Los Angeles, the city council. You got many LA city council members who are part of that group. They're part of the socialists, and if they get more and more elected to the LA City Council, they want to expand it to have more council members vote in that direction. I'm saying we are on the threshold of that happening here in the City of the Angels. And if it doesn't turn around quick, I don't know what the future is going to be for those people in the city of Los Angeles, those that want to work and earn an income and be happy ever after. I don't know if that's going to be a thing that's a thing of the past, as they say, because the attitude of the political structure is changing. It used to be honorable to be an elected official. Now people look at you as, well, are you the next criminal? Or are you the next one who's going to take everything away? It doesn't have the prestige that it once had. It's really fallen. It's fallen very far down, which then erodes not only our city, our state, but our country.
Well, the sense of entitlement, too, that is driving this is so antithetical to how the state has historically been. When you think about it, people come here from all over the globe. Beautiful people come here to make it in Hollywood, and then ugly people come to take 10%. But they come to try to make their name. They come to try to become a movie star, whatever. People go to Silicon Valley because they have an idea on what the next gadget is. It's going to revolutionize the way we live our lives. You go back into history, and people came here during the gold rush to try to take whatever gold they could so they could build their own fortune. It was all about a meritocracy. It was all about, okay, I have certain skills. This skill set would work well in this industry. California's where you make a name for yourself. Let's go there and let's see what'll happen. Let's see what I can do with the talents that God gave me, the talents my parents gave me, the talents I've been working on, whatever. And now this attitude of, well, I am entitled to everything that my dad had because I grew up in an upper middle class home. That's not how it's supposed to work. And if you force the system to work that way, then the magic of what drew us all here is gone.
Well, you're absolutely correct. That's exactly the process that's taking place. And it's not changing. It's just feeding more and more into that environment. So what we see happening is New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, people leave the areas, and they leave the areas for survival. I mean, you're only going to make so much money. Look at the movie industry, for example. I got neighbors that work in the movie industry. They used to be working 5, 6 days a week. Now they're working 1 or 2 days a month because the movie company has said, we're out of California, we're moving to other places. And now they try to lure them back with some incentives. Hey, they're gone. My neighbor's working maybe 2 days a month. They're talking about selling their home because they can't afford it because the movie industry has fled. Once it's gone and they've reestablished in another part of the country where they can make a profit and live the American dream and do the movies as they wish. But now they're the governor comes up with this wacko idea, we're going to give them incentives. But you know what? They're not going to close shop and come back. So people who are in that industry, and I'm sure many of the listeners are in the movie industry, they work in that industry, and it was a very, very good industry to work in, very well paid for the positions that you have. They're gone. And now we say, well, come back. You know what? They're not going to come back. And many people are leaving. But my neighbors are suffering the same consequence. And they cry to me, what are we supposed to do trying to do this? Both husband and wife work in the movie industry. They can't find work. And they've worked many, many years, very experienced, good people, professional people. But the trades have left. And when the trades leave, we're not going to do an incentive to bring them back because they're not going to reestablish when they can go to a nicer place. If you look at, again, how many people have left city service, and when they retire, they take that pension, boom, they're in another part of this country. They're leaving these areas, and Los Angeles, one of the areas they're fleeing from. God forbid you retire from New York, what you're going to do now with your pension and what the new philosophy is in New York. Terrible.
Last question. We have about 30 seconds left. What's your prediction on Rick Caruso? Do you think Rick Caruso runs for mayor of L.A.?
Well, I know Rick Caruso personally. I know him from the time I was a council member. He was a police commissioner. Rick Caruso is a good businessman. He knows how to make things happen. I think he's toying whether he wants to go for mayor or for governor. I think one way he's going to go, one way or another he's going to go. I know the current mayor is soliciting funds, trying to make things happen. I know there's a lot of problems with the city council, a lot of problems with funding. But as far as Rick Caruso, I would support him, whichever one he wants to do. The man can make things happen, and I would be totally supportive of him if he chooses to do that, either way, state or city.
It'd be a mistake for him to run for governor. The only issues I ever see him opine on are L.A. city issues. That's what he seems to care about. If that's what he cares about, that's where he should run.
Absolutely. I totally agree. He'd be a good man to do that because he can make things happen. He's done wonderful as a private thing. I know his dad. I remember his dad, H.J. Caruso. He was selling cars, and he got in trouble with the law. And Rick told me about that one time. But Rick has become a very wealthy man, a very successful man, and I think he'd do well for the City of the Angels.
Councilman Dennis Zine, former member of the Los Angeles City Council, thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great Jimmy Buffett Friday.
Thank you much. Good Friday to you.
It's the John Phillips Show.